Hi, everyone. Welcome to PeopleMetrics Live. Today, we're talking about how to improve clinical trial patient experience. So Kirk, before we dive into our step-by-step breakdown of how to do this exactly, can you clarify for everyone what type of patient feedback we're actually talking about today? Is this patient feedback that's about medication in clinical trials?
The type of feedback that we're talking about is patient feedback on the experience. So anytime you have a clinical trial, you're giving an experience to these patients. And we're really talking about ongoing. It's pretty common to say, what should this clinical trial look like, where we have clinical trial design ahead of time. But this is through the clinical trial, collecting feedback, not on the medication, but on the experience you have throughout that clinical trial. Right now, this kind of feedback is nice to have. All clinical trials do not collect this kind of feedback on how was your experience with this trial. And though it's nice to have today, it is going to be a must-have. The FDA has a patient-focused drug development initiative where they are really encouraging this kind of feedback, and this is something that's being expected for the future. So this is something that you're going to need. And for folks who aren't used to doing this, there might be a question of, well, why is this so important? So I'll turn it over to you, Jean. Do you have any thoughts on kind of the stakes of why folks need to do this?
Yeah, I mean, there is a correlation between the type of experience you can provide for participants and the return that you'll get with their feedback. So, when you provide a better experience for participants, then you will get better recruitment, and you will be able to retain those patients throughout the study. This means that medications can be more readily tested and, to maintain their efficacy. So it's really important to provide a program or, services throughout your clinical study that will help keep the participant involved.
That's really interesting. From what you're saying, it sounds like it's more than, with these FDA regulations coming out, it's more than just checking a box and saying, okay, we did it because we, are being advised to, or we have to. It sounds like there's actually real outcomes that come from collecting this feedback in clinical trials.
Yes, absolutely. And what we want to make sure is that you understand at a general level how you can get that started for kind of you and your team. And so with that, I know that there's kind of a few slides that we have up to go through this process of how you can run these kinds of feedback programs. So why don't we jump into that to give you a picture of how to get it started. And there's three things we want to cover today on how to improve that clinical trial patient experience. And it's really, how do you run this kind of program? How do you collect feedback on the experience in order to improve it? As that is the core. If you want to improve it, you have to first measure and understand what needs to be improved. And the first piece is, I think, it should be no surprise to folks, you need to include this as a part of your protocol. Collecting feedback, of course, not on the medication, but on the experience is something that would be going out to your clinical trial participants. As such, it does need to get approved through any IRB board or whatever for these studies. So you do need to make sure you're including this as a part of your protocol. This is something that is being done today. So this isn't something that's impossible. This is something that is included as part of protocols. But you do want to make sure you're laying out there kind of how you're collecting this feedback and what it is that you're looking to collect as a part of your protocol. Any thoughts there, Jean?
Yeah, this is a critical piece because if it's not included in the protocol, it's not deemed, it may not be as important, while people actually running the study or running the trial are involved with patients. There's going to be a lot of things that they have to do. And so it's very important to have it baked in so that you can train people early that this is a part of the process.
A really good point. Just thinking back to, when we talk about customer experience in pharma, whether it's on the commercial or the clinical side, how important it is to have that, that the importance of collecting that feedback coming from places of authority, saying like this isn't just something that we want to do or we hope to do. This is something that we're naming as a priority, as something that must be done as part of this.
Yeah, this feedback is really important, and you're exactly right, Madeline. It's not just a, hey, this would be nice to have. You're using this feedback to continue to improve upon the experience that you're providing to the participants. So it's crucial that you can get that information.
One other thing that I would note here is, say you have a study that's already in field, and of course you can't include that in your protocol. That's not necessarily an excuse to say, oh, well, the ship has sailed, we don't want to collect this feedback. We have work that we've done where it's for a study that's already in place, and this type of feedback on the experience is included as a cohort rather than as part of the initial protocol itself. Putting it in the protocol is certainly the best way to do it. That does give you more options as far as detailing how you'll reach out to these patients and kind of including it from the outset as a part of your defined process. However, if you do have a study in place, that isn't necessarily an excuse where you can say, well, we're done. It's this is going past us, and there are ways in a cohort to continue it. And I think just to give a quick example, we had a client that I work with that collected feedback through using a cohort, and it was just a handout that they provided us. We're going to collect feedback, and that was allowed within kind of the cohort that they provided, so it didn't disturb the rest of the ongoing protocol they had in place. It wasn't a massive change to their study, but it enabled them to collect this feedback, and they did learn some things as far as, in this particular, it was about some of the literature that they were handing out, some improvements that participants wanted to change for future studies.
It's a great story, Kirk, because it makes me think of, a lot of times when we talk about experience measurement and management, it can feel overwhelming. Like, where do you even start? And I think what you're saying is, first of all, it's possible to start with doing it in that way that you just described, but also that the most important thing is just to start. It might be with something that's maybe not the entire trial, just something that's a smaller sliver. But once you start with it, you'll start to see, like Jean was saying, that the results that you get from this patient feedback is going to teach you something no matter what, and be able to inform what you do in the future. Hi, it's Madeline. Thanks for joining us for PeopleMetrics Live. If this is your first time watching, PeopleMetrics Live is a weekly live webinar session where experts from our team answer your questions about customer, employee, and patient experience measurement and management. And sometimes we show you how you can achieve your goals using tools within our experience management platform. We've been doing this for over 2 decades now, and this is a great way for us to share our knowledge with you. You can sign up for upcoming sessions of PeopleMetrics Live at www.peoplemetrics.com/events and bring a friend.
Yeah, I think, get the data when you can. No matter if it's, earlier or too late, get it while you can. It's good to just start somewhere. But to that point, Madeline, it is important to, try to start early, if you can, which I think might bring us to our next point.
Yes,
so there's some, there's some benefits there. There's some benefits there because you can prepare people for how to engage with participants in a way that makes sense. Sometimes it's as easy as just making sure that they are aware that you will have something in place to collect feedback from participants. When is the best time to provide that opportunity for participants to provide feedback? And you can get people prepped and ready to go so that by the time you're ready to collect feedback, everyone involved knows what their role is, what to do with the information, where the information should go after you collect it, and what to expect afterwards. And while you're getting the sites involved, that's a great time as well to reiterate the importance of getting this feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like the rest of the clinical trial, you're going to rely on the sites for this. This is something where they're your partners, you're working with your CROs, and you want to make sure that they're engaged so they can communicate this to the patient. Just like the rest of the success of the clinical trial, it's all about the sites communicating these things to the patients. And it is like anything else, as far as, they're able to assist you with all of the medical needs and kind of the other site coordination needs. They're going to be able to assist you with the experience feedback. However, this is something new, and so you are going to want to communicate kind of what their requirements are. So in addition to the actual survey, the actual feedback collection that you're putting in front of patients, you need to have very clear materials for your sites and for the folks who are working these projects, so they understand their expectations and their roles that are very detailed, like everything else that you give. So when we field these type of projects, generally we are having multiple meetings with country leaders, with site leaders, to coordinate with them and make clear, here are the different materials you'll receive, here's what you'll want to hand out, here are questions you may hear from patients. That way, they're fully prepared. You certainly don't want any kind of patient receiving something that they're unaware of, asking your site about it, and for the site not to know. So involve those trial sites earlier on, and then keep them involved throughout the process, as they're going to be key to driving that awareness.
Yeah, and Kirk, one thing that you said that I just want to also expand upon, when you're engaging with sites, they may have some insight or input as to what would make sense and how to administer the, the program that you're setting up. Does it make sense to, have iPads there? Does it make sense to have a written version of the survey? And what communications are important to help prepare whoever's going to be involved? And usually when we're working on these projects, we partner with our clients to get a good understanding of what environment we're operating in, so that we can make a good judgment call on what communications make sense.
That's so important, to meet people where they are, right? A lot of times, there's a lot of different options for ways that you can administer surveys like this, but it comes down to thinking about the actual experience and what makes sense to make it as easy as possible for folks to, in whatever your specific population is, to fill that out.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the key thing, is collecting feedback on the experience you provide is its own experience, and you want to do that right and be conscious of how you design that, just like anything else. All right, and maybe that's a good time for, let's move on to this last one of.
Wow, good segues, guys.
For what you are actually putting in front of your patients, for the questions that you're asking them, you do need to make sure that these are tailored to improving your experiences. Of course, that's the purpose of it. And there are some general kind of broad best practices on questions and themes that you'll want to touch on for your clinical trials that are broadly applicable across clinical trials. But you'll also want to make sure that there are specific questions to you that you are asking. And with that, let's jump, as far as what kind of questions might you want to ask. Here are some examples of things that we have done and recommend for clinical trials. And I'll go ahead and take this first one. The first one is around your websites and literature. Now, there is a lot of work that pharmaceutical companies do around the design of our websites, the design of the literature that we provide to whether patients for commercial drugs or in a clinical trial, that are often done kind of prior to being provided. And so it's in that initial design of these materials. With this type of kind of real-time feedback on clinical trials that we recommend, the benefit of this is you are collecting feedback as participants are receiving this information. So you can, after giving an adverse event form, reach out to that patient and say, do you recall receiving this form? Do you recall kind of what symptoms to look out for? Do you recall what to do if these symptoms occur, and what recommendations do you have on that literature? That way, it's a little less academic. It's a little less kind of thinking back or imagining yourself in this scenario. How could this literature help you? It's, you have received this literature. What recommendations would you have? And that's something that we have done for our clients, and you do get this type of feedback from patients of how well do they remember across these different sites receiving this literature, and the visual clarity of it, the instructions it receives, how can it improve their experience?
You're thinking about is what you're providing memorable? Are they able to gather this information provided, or read this information provided, internalize it, and understand how this literature is going to relate to their experience. And so those are things that you want to hone in on to make sure that these are what you're providing is effective.
Did you know that you can watch past sessions of PeopleMetrics Live right here on our YouTube channel? All you have to do is click the link above. Be sure to check them out for answers to dozens of questions, along with stories, tips, short tutorials, and best practices from our team of experts. Click the bottom right corner of this video to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an update.
A next big one would be the start of the trial, where there are kind of a few things that you'd want to know. You've got a little bit of cutoff there, but there's kind of an understanding kind of the program and kind of what you are what's going to be required at the start of the program, the information you are provided, and your comfort in asking questions. That's another big one, especially at the start of the trial. This is going to be important because this is when you're going to have the most questions, and you need to make sure that you're providing an atmosphere where folks understand the process, they get good information, and they have comfort asking questions. How about the next one, Jean? Do you want to take that?
Yeah, just to round that out, I've had, we do a lot of open-ended, a qualitative analysis of open-ended feedback that we get, and oftentimes there's anxiety before starting participating in a trial, and the people want to know like what to expect, not just in terms of from the treatment itself, but where do I go? How long will this take? Things of that. So I just wanted to highlight that, providing a clear understanding of the process, and it's all about setting up expectations that's building a foundation for what that experience is going to be like throughout the trial.
That makes me think too about, we talk about this a lot when we're talking about customer experience in a more traditional sense, but what happens when, for example, at a hotel, if you are being marketed to and that you're going to receive a certain experience before you check into that hotel, that it's going to be this, 5-star amazing experience, and then you check in and it's less than that, or not what was communicated to you ahead of time. That's a very jarring experience for you, and because you had different expectations coming in, it's about having those communications ahead of the experience match what the actual experience will be, so that people know what to expect, like you were saying, Jean.
Yeah. So when we talk about the middle of the trial, that's your opportunity to continue to get feedback from participants, and as you'll see, when you're setting up a program, especially when it's involving a clinical trial, you want to track that journey throughout. And so just like you said, Madeline, it's one thing to set up expectations, but then you need to see, are you meeting those expectations? How are all the services that are provided to support the patient while they're on this trial, are you delivering? And, some of those services, can be make or break. Somebody is dependent on, transportation to and from the site, and the transportation was late, or it was just a bad experience. They may say, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't. So yeah, when participants are in the trial, you still need to keep a pulse on how they're doing. So, is the site that is offered for them to participate, is that convenient for them? Is it going to be an hour drive? And then also just, how's the staff? Like, how's the bedside manner? Do they feel like they're being well taken care for? Do they feel like they're just being pushed through a machine? Next person, and then they don't. Not even next person, next patient. Like, do they feel like a person, or not? And all that matters. Because we're dealing with people's lives, and it goes back to like the FDA is saying that this is important to make sure that people are being treated the way that you should treat people, during a study.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to add is that in our experience, pharma companies are inherently skittish about asking questions to patients or asking for too much details, because there are a lot of regulatory concerns. We work in a very strict regulatory environment. However, this work that we're talking about can be done and is being done kind of by top pharma companies today. These questions around the start of the trial and the middle of the trial, and when we get to the kind of the last component here as well, are questions that we use with a nonprofit company called Transcelerate, which created a series of questions in partnership with top pharmaceutical companies to ask about the clinical trial experience. So if anyone on the line is seeing this set of questions and thinking like, oh my gosh, I've got to ask patients if their trial site was positive, their staff was positive, I'm worried about the answers I'll receive. You're not the first one who has that concern, but the top pharmaceutical companies are navigating this, and these are studies that are in field today, and exactly as Gene was just saying, will be expected in the future. So at the end of the trial, of course, we're seeing all of this come to wrapping up, and we want to see how that concluded. So it's just generally, how was that trial completion experience, your last visit? Are you aware of any future opportunities for participation in additional clinical trials, and the overall process? At this point, you have completed this full arc of engaging with any literature or website, start of the trial, the middle of the trial, the end of the trial. We want to see how that all wraps up and the experience across this experience. One other thing I'd note here as we're looking across this journey, the Transcelerate questionnaire that I mentioned does really focus on that start, middle, and end of trial across some of these key components. And you do see how that evolves, where you've got this early focus on knowledge and learning. In the middle of the trial, it's really how did we follow through on that in real time. And then in the end, it's kind of wrap up. Our clients, we do generally recommend that they include questions that are supplemental to this, that are based on their specific clinical trial. So often, if you do have a specific website or app that you, something that you've set up for your clinical trial that is unique to your patients that you want to learn, was this effective? Was this beneficial for us? We've invested this effort to create this tool from our patients. Did they use it, and was it helpful? That's the kind of thing that you want to learn in real time and hear from the participants. Is this something that they got value out of?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, the Transcelerate survey is a great base to start from. But whenever you're designing a program, I'd like to reiterate what you're saying, Kirk. It's really important to think about, how does this apply to your study, and what makes sense, which questions make sense to ask, what doesn't, and to tailor it so that you're getting the information that you need.
Our founder and CEO, Sean, is writing a new book all about creating, measuring, and managing customer experiences in the pharmaceutical industry called Pharma CX Secrets. In this book, Sean presents 20 easy to implement but powerful strategies that you can use to turn your pharma company into a truly patient-centric organization in both commercial and clinical settings. Pharma CX Secrets will be available on Amazon soon. Go to PeopleMetrics.com/PharmaCX Secrets to sign up to be notified. This was great, guys. Anything else on this diagram before we go into Q&A?
I don't think so. I think maybe just as a quick kind of recap before we jump to the Q&A, when you're thinking of how to implement a program like this, of a real-time experience feedback program in your clinical trial, start by including it in the protocol. Of course, that's where you think about it early on, and think about including it in your protocol. If that will give you the most options as far as how you execute it. As far as, do I want an iPad on the site? Do I want a QR code? Do I want a handout? If you can't do that, if this is something that the protocol has come and gone, use a cohort. That's not an excuse. You can't say it's too late. It's never too late. The second thing that we would say, certainly include your trial sites. They are your partners on this. You want to make sure that they're engaged, understand how they're involved, and have clear instructions. And that's going to be how you ensure the success of your program. And then the last thing here is really tailor those questions. Use this Transcelerate questionnaire as a base, but then really you want to tailor it to your experience. And with that, I think let's hear from the Q&A.
Fantastic. All right. Let's see. All right, we've got a question here. It says, I get the feedback mechanism, but what about awareness? What is the best way to drive awareness around a clinical trial?
That's a question that we've gotten, which part of these studies are used to learn about. You can ask those questions from these participants of, how did you become aware of this study? And, what can we do to kind of make you aware of future opportunities? So these studies are certainly geared toward collecting feedback on, folks who are already engaged. But if you have certain patient populations that are engaged in your study currently that are hard to reach, that's a question you can ask directly as a part of your feedback mechanism. So it's something that you can collect that feedback to learn for future trials of how can I best reach you for the future, or not even you directly, but how can I best reach other patients for future studies. And
That's
so
what's
certainly
great
I would say,
about. Oh, go ahead, Kirk. Go ahead.
one last thing, yes, certainly the goal of these types of studies is making sure you're providing the best experience for the trial. However, building awareness is often going to be a secondary benefit. And as you are just kind of improving that experience, that has benefits for retention, which of course are just keeping that participation in the trial for the future.
I was only just going to add that's what's so great about doing this type of, just collecting feedback in general, is that yes, you're going to get answers to questions that you are asking, but you also will get information that at the aggregate level or just in general can inform other decisions that you make in your future planning. For example, if you find out that a lot of people found out about the trial from one certain channel, that can, say, like Kirk was saying, that you might invest more of your efforts on the awareness side in that area. But that could also inform, oh my gosh, this population is needed for another trial or something like that, where, we've learned from collecting feedback previously that a good place to start building that awareness might be at that specific channel. And so on. So I've got a couple other questions here. So one I've got here is, are these programs being run on global studies? You guys want to take that?
Can you take that one, Jean?
Yeah, they are being run on global studies. And when that is being done, you do have to be mindful that there are different regulatory, approvals that need to be, gone through for each region. So, just be mindful of that and build that into your schedule. As Kirk mentioned previously, if you want to get this done ahead of time and you want to hit the ground running, you have to build in timelines for not only, designing your survey, but then getting it approved through whatever internal review processes are in place. So as Kirk and I have mentioned before, we've both been involved in many projects involving clinical trials. And we are usually able to help support. Well, we are able to support because we've launched things globally, but all the different processes and providing materials to make sure that those internal review bodies have what they need to, make sure they understand what the program is about and what's going to be shared with the patient. And that spans everything from the survey itself to all of the communications that will also be shared internally or would be patient facing. We partner with our clients to, craft messaging and help support the client through the translation process, if materials need to be translated into many different languages. And our surveys can also be programmed in different languages as well to support a global launch.
Thanks so much, Jean. Kirk, anything to add to that before I jump to our last question?
I think that was great. Maybe just one last thing I note is, you can have, the feedback might be slightly different depending on what gets approved across countries, but exactly, I think what Jean said was the key thing of it is being done and it can be done. So don't think that this is just a US phenomenon.
Awesome. All right. And last question is, how do you maintain participant anonymity?
I can take that one. And I think Our clients fit in a few ways. Some of the surveys themselves are we are totally walled off from that information. If it's a generic link survey that is provided by the trial sites, that's information we're never receiving from the patient. So you're for the participant. So you can be sure this information is totally anonymous. I know it came from these sites if it's a link that is unique to each site, or I know you're in my study because you participated in the study, but you're totally walled off from that information. And so that can be done if it's a generic link that's handed out at the site, or if it is a paper survey at the site as well, you can do that. However, if you have studies where as you can have where you're emailing these participants directly, what you would want to do is there would be a firewall between whoever's sending these surveys. In the case for our clients, that's us. So if you have a survey provider who's sending out these surveys, they do not relay that information back to you. There is that strict firewall of, and so you do need to make sure whoever is sending these surveys has those protections in place as far as the security audits and the compliances for these global studies. But those are kind of the two ways of either never collect that information or make sure there's an appropriate firewall between who's collecting it and then you ultimately receiving that data.
And I'd also like to add that, within our platform, we can also put restrictions in place so that, based on a user's role and what access they are allowed to have to the data that's collected, we can make sure that data is hidden so that they cannot continue, they cannot see patient-related information if we have it.
I just want to thank you both, Jean and Kirk, for sharing your time and expertise with us today. I know I learned a lot. And thank you for this great discussion about how to improve clinical trial patient experience. I hope that this has been a valuable conversation for everyone that we've got on the line today. And I'll make sure that when this goes up on our YouTube channel, we include a link to download that diagram that we went through today. And on behalf of everyone here at PeopleMetrics, thank you for joining us for PeopleMetrics Live. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe right here so you never miss an update. And have you checked out other sessions of PeopleMetrics Live yet? You can click right here to watch them all. I'll see you there.